Welcome to another Epic Cycles unboxing video. Today, we're unboxing the brand new Rerode. It's good. Typical strapping. Take the cap off. You get a couple of things are going to fall out of it. Mostly cardboard packaging. We're just going to throw the cardboard off to the side. You'll see one package I put aside. This is going to be your charger case. Nice little box that it comes in. Inside of this box, you got your charger, of course. And that's pretty much all the info that you need to deal with that. There'll be a couple of small things that we can put in the box when we're done. Take off the plastic tent. On one side, we got our wheel. Even has a little bit of silicone on the rim already. It's not actually water. Put that against the tool chest. More cardboard, more bubble wrap. Bubble wrap's fun for the kids to play with. That's looking pretty good already. So as usual, you'll have all your little zip ties done, cut. Be careful not to be too aggressive so you don't actually cut a wire or anything. That'll come off there. We got these guys. That disappears. Off they go. Off that goes. You don't have to see the backside, but that's just the same foam over there. And boom. We're getting a little bit of a look at it already. Now they tied this guy up really tight here. I can tell by the way it looks. I think I'm probably, you know what? Sometimes I like to save that. But on this one, because of all the knots, I'm not going to bother. You're going to see the suspension's going to bounce up because it's loaded. There we go. Out comes that. A little bit of protection. There's your R1 logo for the Rerode R1. Inside here, there's your 72 volt battery, which has a 35 amp hour capacity. Bike will have a speed of 88 kilometers an hour and a range, they're claiming up to 120. I'm sure with all the fun and throttle twisting, anybody buying this is going to get a little bit less, but it's going to be all thrill factor all the way. So here we are starting to reveal everything. Again, be very careful with your cutters. We got your hydraulic line, no, actually the throttle line here. Don't get too excited and cut the throttle line. We will have spare parts if you need them in the future, but let's have that in the future, not now. There's our other brake lever. And you'll see the bar is only dressed up on one side. There's our headlight, four cell LED. And here's another one of these straps, which is all tied up. I'm just going to cut it. The fork's going to pop up in the air. This one's got full width on it. There we go. There's the fork rising to the occasion. Let's see what's in here. You should have a couple of little bits and pieces. By the looks of it, I think there's going to be one of the standing pegs will be in here. There we go. A little bit of padding. That's probably going to be for the number plate, for the zip tie. More padding. So the mechanical items that we're going to need. There's our standing pegs. So you can see a nice forged aluminum peg. It's got the perches already mounted to it, spring loaded, left and right. We'll explain more about how that gets installed as we go. Just going to put them down below. What's this thing here? Oh, you get a little toolkit, a couple of Allen keys, and a wrench. What's this thing? These are the spacers for your wheels. So your front wheel. So those are the spacers that you're going to put on the axle. I'm going to put that down here. And look at these. You got the keys. All right. Oh, and some rubber straps for tying up neatening up the cables. So, oh, one more thing we can remove. Cut this fender off. This will be our front fender. Nicely wrapped again. Double wrapped. That's a fender. Reasonably stiff. 4 bolts on it. That'll be going underneath the crown. So usually what I like to start up is setting up the front end. I'm just going to pull this bike just a little bit more over. And as a good habit, I like to use a magnetic bowl. Oh, hold on. Bingo. Any good mechanic would have one of those around. If you don't, try to have something like a little cup. Here's something I just noticed. If you look down here, you'll see a couple of bolts on the bottom. So these bolts go into the fork. I found 3 of them. There should be 2 on each side. I'm just going to feel. There's 1 there still and none on this side. So either they fell out or for whatever reason the factory didn't install them. So when you receive this bike, look carefully for these items. You're going to need them in the future. If you've lost them, these are looking like an M5 by 20 millimeter bolt. So if you had to get replacements, hopefully you don't, then that's what you'll need in the future. Okay, so we got our fork lower bolts in here. This fork is a fast ace fork, very plush, really nice action on it. You'll have your adjustments up here. So you're going to have in here, what are we looking at here? We got compression and rebound. There's also an air charge down below right here for charging up the fork with air. I believe that's what I'm looking at, or not, am I not? One of these is going to be it. We'll probably see that closer a little bit later. So there's be an air cylinder in there to sort of help support the fork, give it a little bit more ride height. And there's another adjustment here. That one actually should be a rebound or compression. They didn't mark it on here, unless they marked it on the side. If you look closely with the camera, it might see that. But we'll figure that out later. Right now, let's just get her built. One really nice touch that they did to this fork already is put a direct mount stem on it, keeping a really clean top on it. No nub coming above, so it's really, really smooth up here. And there's your direct mount stem, which we'll set the bar up to in a moment. I'm just going to take these fork face plates off, or the stem face plates off on both sides. This tool I'm using is a handy 3-way Allen key, commonly used in the bike industry. And again, put them in your cup or your magnetic tray. We'll put all those parts together. Same thing going on the other side, the right side. I'm going to call right and left from the rider's perspective. All right. One thing I always do when I assemble, so I never like to dry fit a bolt. So I'm just going to put a tiny bit of grease on each thread. That's just to wet the threads so that they can torque down nicely. They won't corrode or rust. I believe they're using stainless on here and aluminum. So generally those 2 materials don't corrode, but it's just a nice touch that I do as a mechanic on everything I build. All right, now we want to arrange all of these cables. So that throttle is going to go on that side there, on the left side. So we get this up, look at all this entanglement happening. So we're just going to look at the cables, make sure there's no binding and twisting. That's a nice smooth route, everything coming from the right side, coming back as a nice arch or arc. And then on the right side, we're going to set the lever up. And you're going to probably want to do this before you mount the bar, because I think if we mount the, yeah, you'll see if I mounted the bar, there's not enough there, and you don't want to pull on that wire because you're going to ruin something. So we're going to slide that bar into here. Oh, they didn't make a pre-space on that, or preset. So I'm going to go back to my Allen key here. Just going to open this up a tiny bit. 2 or 3 turns on each one. And that'll allow me to slide the brake lever on the end of the bar. That looks pretty. Now for the throttle. Again, if the wire is twisted, what I'm just going to do is you're going to see I'm gently sort of tugging it this way, just in case it wants to have a twist, just to make sure there's no twist left when I'm done. That can slide over. I'm going to leave them loose for now, and I'm going to prep the bar and stem up. I think this, oh, that'll just barely hang. That's okay. So it won't, hopefully won't fall on the floor in the middle of this job. Now we can put the face plates on. Face plates, it doesn't really matter which way they go, whether it's up or down, because there is no up or down on it. They're symmetrical. Sometimes you'll see an up or down symbol on it. Try to follow the directions. Make it look good. That way your buddies don't go, hey buddy, you did something wrong over here. And then you have second doubts about what you just did. All right, so I just primed them in. Never put a bolt in with a power tool or anything first, because you want to make sure that the threads are priming, that they're going in, and by finger tight. I know this one's turning. This one seems to be a little bit bindy. I'm going to back it out just for fun, but I know it took 2 turns to get in. Actually 3 turns, forget it. That's good. So there's probably a bit of the somewhat of a Loctite they put on. It's your choice if you want to use Loctite instead of grease. I find on most of the times on this type of stuff, this isn't like a motorcycle that has a lot of vibration that things shake loose. But if you insist, you can go ahead and put blue Loctite in there. I wouldn't go to red. These bolts are fairly small, and they may not be able to, you might not be able to untorque them if you put some crazy strong Loctite in there. And definitely stay away from the green stuff. And again, winding this down. You'll probably see me lifting this up just so I don't catch the edge of this, and use the bolt to drag a little mark in there. Neatness is always nice. You know, you want to have a nice clean looking job. This is something to be proud of. This bike is a pretty amazing bike, so once you're all done, all the thrill factor is going to go up big time. So now I'm just going to roll the bar up. You'll see there's some centering lines here and a little target on the front. You can approximate this to where you want it. If you're sort of looking at it from a side angle here, you'll see that you can like go supermoto on it, where it's like a wheelie bike. I don't really like that position. Or you toboggan it back, sort of like a Superman bike when you're doing, like, you know, flying off a jump and you're going for a seat grab, if you're up to that level. I'm going to start with a neutral position where the bar is kind of, this part of the bar is in a vertical position. And that's just a good starter spot. However you like it, that's personal. But let's just start like that. So I'm just going to bind everything down. You'll see I'm putting very little effort just to snug the bar down, using equal amounts of force on each side. And you can see by the fingertips that I'm using, I'm not putting my elbow into this. I'm feeling some tension now. And this is kind of a hard reference for people to see visually. You can use a torque wrench if you wish, and follow the prescribed torque ratings for bolts of these sizes. I don't have all of these things memorized right now. I'm going to guess these are going to be anywhere from 10 to 12 nanometers or Newton meters. And what I'm just going to do is I'm going to just spin them down till I feel a bit of snugness. You can see right now, not a lot of effort yet. I just want to make sure they hit bottom. There we go. Now I'm going to give it a bit of torque. And you'll see by the effort I put in, it's not a lot. These things don't have to be wrenched down like it's a rear axle nut. And even a rear axle nut, they're through axles now. They don't work the same as the old days. And then just go back. Just feel for the same amount of resistance. You might look at the amount of flex that's happening in the Allen key. You know, so you don't really have to go crazy on that. I feel pretty satisfied and safe with that now. Done there. Throttle. We're going to just put the throttle in position. You don't want to bang it all the way to the bottom of the bar, because if you should do so, you'll see how the throttle wants to stick and then it doesn't. So if you find you have a sticky throttle after you've assembled the bike, it's probably because you pulled this down too far. And I'm going to do this just on purpose. Right now I'm pulling it too tight, showing you what the problem will be that you'll have later if you make this mistake. So now I think it's good. I turn the throttle and see the throttle is slowly returning, if not sticking. There's where it's supposed to be. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to loosen this a bit. And you can kind of hear what I'm going to do. Bottom, I'm just going to move it out maybe 2 millimeters. Then I'm going to snug it down. Snug the bottom one down. And again, this housing doesn't need to be torqued down heavily. It's not something that your life totally depends on. You don't want the thing to come off by accident. But you can see, not putting a lot of effort. Now we listen to the throttle. Nice snapping action to it. Brake lever. There might be a flat spot. In this case, I'm not seeing it. But I'm having a feeling you'll see this part here getting very close to the throttle body. So let me put it close. And you'll probably notice something that's going to happen. When I go to hit the brake, okay, brake stuck because it's got resistance here. So again, we're going to give a little tiny bit of space here. There isn't a flat spot to accommodate the throttle. There we go. Now I can put some more height to it. Up she goes. This has a safety on it. Put the safety on. A little bit out of breath here. All right. So almost ready to mount the front wheel. What I want to do, it's a habit of mine, always grease every bolt. See, the fact that it's sticky right now means that it's kind of over tightened or binding. I happen to have a vise handy. If you don't have a vise, just stick the end of it into the fork. Use the bolts I'm going to show you next just to hold the axle. I got a cloth on here. I would never mount an axle. Oh boy, she's turning. All right, we're going to do it the way that I wanted to show you as another trick. So, back to where I started. We got our 4 bolts that are going to go into the bottom and my grease. Just going to tie my shoelaces here for a moment. So down below, you'll see 2 empty holes. Prime that in there. Finger tight, you know it's turning. Next one, tiny bit. Put it in there. Prime it by hand. There was one that was in there already that either A, didn't fall out, or B, it was the only one they tightened. I would suggest that Rerode install all of them or put them in the box. It's very possible that they could have rolled around the box, and if the box had a hole in it, they might have fallen out in transport. And then that means you got to go off to your local Fastenal or machine bolt department, buy yourself a couple of bolts. So, what was I going to show you there? I was going to show you how you would do this, take this nut off or this bolt out without using a vise. So I'm just going to put it in here, just any way, it doesn't matter how far it goes in. This fork is now going to be my vise. And I don't have to tighten both bolts necessarily. I'm just going to snug one down, put some clamping force on it. There it is, she's off. Everything's dry and clean, not a drop of anything on there. To take your axle out, well, just reverse the process. Turn this back down. I'm going to give it 2 turns, 1, 2. Axle's out. Little tiny bit of grease into the axle threads. Again, you want this to come out in the future someday. I'm going to spin one of these bolts down. It doesn't have to be tightened. That'll tighten itself as we get to the next stage. You'll see one fork extends more than the other. That's kind of normal. You can see you can bring the fork down. So my suggestion is to install the axle through the brake side first, because you can center this. If you have it on that side, it might be a little bit more finicky. Who knows, maybe you'll find a different angle at that yourself. This piece here is a spacer for your brakes. Should somebody pump the brakes and the brake pads start to close up without this in it, you won't be able to get the rotor in. If you somehow do it, you'll need to put something in here, a flathead screwdriver, and be gentle. You don't want to gouge the pads, but even if you gouge them a bit, it's not going to be life-threatening, but you want to make sure that gap that you're seeing is there, right? So that little gap where the rotor is going to pass through. Okay, so axle's just waiting for me. You can save that for future transport or service jobs. Remember, here's our cone spacers. There's little O-rings out here that sort of seals it and also retains them into the wheel that we're going to put on next. So we're grabbing the wheel. Here's our front wheel. I'm going to put in the spacer and just make sure it's in firmly. And then the other side, you see I'm going to use a bit of an angle, drop it in, and make sure that O-ring stays inside. Let me try to mess it up. Sometimes people make a mistake and they roll the O-ring out. So let's say, this one doesn't want to, this one's hard to screw up. That's a nice touch. Anyways, the O-rings are in. If the O-ring should ever protrude, back this off, reseat the O-ring, put it in there. That O-ring's doing a couple of things. It's keeping dirt out and it's allowing the bearing to roll smoothly. Now we're going to roll the wheel in. Wheel goes in. I'm going to do it in a couple of stages. I'm going to lift it up into the brake, and then I'm going to slide the axle into the wheel spacer. On one side, I'm rotating this fork a little bit away so I don't knock the spacer out. And boom, one's in. Now we're going to go to the other side. You're going to see a little bit of the axle come out. Boom, that was really cooperative. Love it when things behave like this. Nice build. I love building this bike. This bike just wants to get on the road. It's probably telling me it wants a charge. It wants somebody to take it out and show them the new surroundings it's going to be in. Bikes have a soul. All right, so I put one 8mm on one side. I put the other 8mm on the other side, and I just bind these two nuts together. As you can see, I'm putting a bit of force, but I'm not stomping on it, trying to put it down like your lug bolts or lug nuts on your car. Now, critical thing, the final thing, making sure these two bolts or 4 bolts are absolutely properly tightened. These are the ones that are really doing all the work. And because of the compression, they're going to compress on the cylinder of this, thus retaining these nuts from coming undone. And first, I'm just going to prime them in there with the ball end. Never use the ball end to tighten or remove bolts. It's just there to make these jobs quicker when it's hard to reach something. And when things are hard to reach and this is the only thing to use, you're doing so at high risk because there's not a lot of contact on these little surfaces. Then I put the full socket in, give it a bit of torquing, a little bit more. And again, you're going to see the effort I'm putting in. I'm just using my thumb really. That bottomed out. Now I'm going to match up the same tension on the other side. And because it clamped down so much, I was able to use the ball end again. Here we go. 1. Don't go by what I'm counting. Go by the feel and sort of watch what I'm doing here. All right, I'm putting a bit more effort. I think I like that tension. Then we make sure the other bolt is equal. And again, because these things are working together, they're both sharing the load. That felt the same. That feels the same. Now I can go to the other side. I'm just going to spin those bolts down. Getting close to bottom or at bottom as far as this ball-ended Allen key will take it. Next one, spin that down. Bottomed out. Now the same torque procedure as I did before. 1. All right, 2. And again, don't go by my count, go by how it feels. Just because I've counted some numbers doesn't mean those numbers mean anything. It's about how you feel it or torque it. And if you're really concerned, again, refer to a torque chart, and there's charts on the internet for M4, M5, M6, every bolt out there. They'll give you recommended torque ratings for them for bolts of this type. And of course, you have to have a torque wrench to make that happen. And we happen to have one. I've been doing this for so long that unless it's a engine part, and we're not dealing with motorized engines, cylinder heads and that, these torques are good approximate ranges. All right, resistance is the same on both. Bango, this thing is almost a bike now. Now for the other last pieces, we got our pegs, or footrests as sometimes they're called. They'll go on each side. How do you know what side they go on? Well, when they're mounted, actually, I'm going to do a dry mount and spin one nut off. You'll see some holes in here, and you'll see a little boss. And you also see two positions here. Front position and a rear position. And trying to center it to the hole, these things will go on an angle. So don't expect this to look square like that. It's like this on purpose, because when you fall down, the peg will pivot up and backwards because you're going forward when you fall down. Where do you want these? Well, it's a personal choice. If you put them further back, it's going to trim the bike so more of your weight's backwards, and it's going to make the front end of the bike feel lighter. If you put it to the front position, it's going to move you more forward, moving your weight, shifting your weight forward, and putting more weight on the front wheel. What that translates to, do they actually make it so you only can put it one way? That is an interesting thing. Well, look at that. So they make it so that really you have to put it in the backward position. Well, you know what? More people are going to like it that way because it's going to be easier to do a wheelie. So that's the way it's going to be. To change that, you're going to have to re-drill that. I wouldn't bother. For that extra, inch of forward motion, ain't going to make no never mind. And this is an area where I'm not going to use grease. We don't have a lock nut, so I'm going to put your famous blue Loctite on it. And before I prep everything, I'm also going to select a wrench. This is looking bigger than a 15. It certainly is. So that tool is not in my personal collection right now. 18. Bingo. We're in business. 18 millimeters on that nut. So you probably have a socket set. Every socket set will have an 18 in it. So I'm just going to put a little bit of blue on there. These threads are clean already, so I'm not worried about them being contaminated with a dirty thread. Roll that guy in. Spin the nut from the backside. Make sure you're in those two little bosses that stop the perch from rotating. Nice. And this, well, this bolt you can put about as much torque as you can think you can put with your own bare hands. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to snug it down. And because it's on this stand, I don't want to be so aggressive that I'm going to pull the bike off the stand and have it fall over on me or our cameraman here. So I'm just giving it a couple of whackatolas, and that's nice. All right, now we just go for the rinse and repeat procedure. Again, spin our nut off. Don't put your greasy little fingers all over all this stuff, so you don't want to contaminate it. A little bit of blue on the threads. Put the lid on back on your Permatex or Loctite or whatever you use. Put that aside. I don't think I'll need that anymore. Now we just go to the right side of the bike. Pop that into position. Spin our nut down on it. See how easily that went together. Pick up the slack. All right, it's bottomed out. All right, I'm afraid I'm shaking this bike too much. All right, here we go. I'm going to just let the wheel touch the floor while I'm torquing it. All right, I'm confident that that's good. Put your tool in a place so you're going to find it again. This bike is nearing completion now. Pretty quick, pretty easy, pretty straightforward. I'm just going to wipe up all the drivel up here. And now that we got it at this stage, I'm going to lower off the repair stand. Milk crate might work for you. You want something decently solid to hold it. The bike's so light, it's very easy to handle. Drop the kickstand, whammo. So, just to do a final check. Front end, done. I'm confident with that. Fenders, that's a no-brainer. Handlebar, good. Brake levers, like I said, that's subjective. So here I am. You drop your hand down. Look at that, first guess. Right where I want them, under the bottom of my fingertips. 2-finger brake grab is really nice. Personally, I would move this in a bit more. So I'm only grabbing 2. See how there's a bit of lever on the outside? If this was inboard a bit more, I'd be putting more force on it with less effort. More force, less effort. That's a positive thing you want to see. Wheel's going to be aiming forward. There's no way of putting the bars on crooked. There's your suspension moving. There's the bottom end going. Aim the headlight. And now for some of the finishing touches. All right, so in the box we have our last little bits. We put the little rubber pieces on. I mentioned that. Here's some Velcro straps that are going to be for the number plate that comes with it. And that I'm not going to mount right now, but you can put that right on the front if you wish. And you got some Velcro straps, sorry, zip ties that'll go around the fork blades to do that. We're not doing that today. Personally, I don't even think this makes a big touch to the bike, but if you want it, it's there. If you want to put your personal number, it's there. You can also put the backside on and put anything else you want. You can put your own name on there. You can put your girlfriend's face on there. How about that? There you go. There's that toolkit, just so that you can see what it came with, in case you're ordering one of these bikes and you're not sure what you're going to get or what you might have to buy. Like I mentioned, there's an 8mm, so that would have been for the fork. I used 2 of them, but one might do the job. That looks like a 5mm. That was what I used on the bottom of the fork. There is a 4mm, which was I used that on the brake levers. Here's an 8. Had no use for that during this entire assembly. There's an 18. Nice. So that's, you don't have to buy one now. That comes for your pegs. So all of that stuff's going to be in there. What the 8mm for, you'll find out later. Didn't need it on the assembly. So that's all of that. That concludes the build of a R1 Rerode. This bike is capable of 88 kilometers an hour, has a 4,000 watt motor in it with a peak power of 8,000 watts. So the speed 88, the capacity of the battery, it's a 72 volt with a 35 amp hour battery. They claim a range of up to 120K. That's usually at eco mode, but in the fun mode, you're going to get a lot less than that, and you're going to have a big giant smile on your face, and you're going to be loving every second of it. Tire pressure I didn't do. You guys know what you like. You can set that up yourself. Chain tension is already good from the factory. Essentially, all this bike needs to be done is to take it to a full charge and let her go. And in order to do that charge, like many bikes, there's a charging port on one side or the other. Here it is right here. So there's your charging port. The charger that's in the bag, you just plug the charger in. You plug the charger into the wall. The light will start off green for a moment, go red. It'll stay red until it's fully charged. And when it's fully charged, it'll go green. Underneath here is where your battery is. Your key is your ignition key, which works up here to turn it on. And if I should turn it on right now, there's going to be some juice in it. Oh, wait a minute. There's juice in it, yes, but the battery is not connected for the safety of transport. So we open this baby up. There's our cord. There's our breaker switch. And there's the handle for pulling it out. And there's even a battery indicator. And it's saying that it's at 80%. Well, it's ready for a blast. But for good battery health, please do charge your battery up to full. The plug is pretty simple to put in. Just line it up. You'll see a little locking clip. Snap, you're in. To undo it, you're going to push on this button, wiggle and pull. there she goes. Nice little O-ring to help prevent water from getting inside of your battery. So that doesn't mean that you can submarine this thing or spray it with water. So stay away from this thing with pressure washers, right? If you're going to spray anything, the wheels, the mechanicals, stay away from this area with water. You'll thank yourself later. There's a circuit breaker here. When we throw the breaker, I believe this is going to be the on position. That's going to turn it on. And if I put it into the ignition now, there we go. Headlight flashed. Everything's ready. It's in eco mode. There's sport mode. Pretty straightforward. There's a bunch of really cool things that this bike does as well. It has a regenerative type braking, which does sort of regenerate the battery, but what it does, it saves your brakes. So when you let go of the throttle, the bike will slow down. It has several different positions for that. So you can have an aggressive sort of regen, or a passive regen, or no regen, meaning when you let go of the throttle, it glides. It's nicer for setting up jumps. You guys will figure that out. There's your horn. We know it works. And it's set up in kilometers per hour because we're in Canada. I think, guys, unless there's anything else you want to know, you'll be able to find that on the demo video. But at this point, this is it, the Rerode. I think it's going to be a good runner-up against bike brands like Sur-Ron, Talaria. It's got that light, nimble feel to it. It's got that fast capacity. It's got a couple of upgrades on it. Having the 72 volt and the capability of doing better than 80K an hour, that's something that people are going to want to see. I really did like the fast ace suspension on this too. It's a much thicker fork stanchions on here. So there should be upgrades for spring rates. If you're a heavier rider, above 180 for performance riding, it'll still hold a guy at 200, 220. But if you like to slam it, you want that full, nice, plush, gushy feel, you'll want to fine tune the suspension. And there's a lot of adjustments you can set up to suit your riding style. Same on the rear end here. You got a coil over, hydraulic damping, compression. Does it have a rebound? I believe it does. It's sort of hidden down below here. So you can make this feel as dead or as lively as you want. You can turn it up and have it really slow, let's say street mode, where you don't want all that bouncing action. And then you can make it super plush by opening it up and then setting it up under a controlled rating so that you don't go for a second bounce off the ground on a hard landing. That's it, man. This is the bike, the Rerode. We're really excited. If you like this video, please like and share. Leave your comments below. Have an epic day.